you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you so much.
Great. Can you
My
see
name
me
is,
as well?
yes, I can see you.
Perfect.
My name is Kosie Chu from the Research Capacity Development Unit. I'll be your moderator for today's session.
Perfect. Thank you. So I had planned it around being an interactive presentation. So I will talk a little bit, give people an opportunity to ask questions, and then we can have a discussion. And because it's a workshop, if there's anyone who's working on a specific presentation, unfortunately, we won't be able to look at it collectively during the session. I would be happy to have a look at it at an alternative time, given the fact that the timelines or deadlines are reasonable from the person's end. Just to get us started, lesson number one. If it's a Teams meeting or Zoom or an online meeting, please make sure you log on early. Please make sure you're relaxed and you know how to share your screen. I hope I provide a good example.
Yes, Doc, I can hear you clearly. Thank you for that.
Perfect. All right. I've started sharing my screen. I will do F5. There you go. Please confirm if you can see my screen.
Yes, we can see your screen, Doc.
Perfect. Thank you. Again, as introduced, my name is Anthony Kaziboni. I'm a senior researcher at the Center for Social Development in Africa here at the University of Johannesburg. I've been at the university for almost a decade and a half. I've lectured from first years through to masters, and I am honored and delighted to be facilitating this session on presentation development. And I added skills at the end. You have had a look at the program, and many thanks to Ms. Onika for extending the invitation for me to come through and talk to you. Presenting is a core aspect of academia, and as students or researchers, you will find yourself involved in presenting in one way or the other. Today, I will cover the importance of presentation, some key components, common pitfalls where we struggle, as well as strategies on how to put together an impactful presentation. It's always very important for you to make sure that there is power to the point. The structure of the presentation, it's threefold, parts A, B, and C. A being guiding questions for presentation on research-based work. We'll be looking at general presentation skills for all kinds of presentations. Make sure that we speak particularly to research-based presentations towards the end. Part C, we'll also look at some pointers around presenting your own research. So the question is always, where does one begin when making a presentation on research-based work? Where do you start? At this stage, I'm sure I'm talking to people who are either at the proposal stage or nearing the end of their projects. So it would be great, I think, for me to stop here and just get a sense of who's in the room. Who's in the room? I will end the show just for a short while so that we can have a look at each other and familiarize ourselves with one another. Who's in the room? Okay, you can unmute and introduce yourself and just tell us a bit about what you're doing.
Yes, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. You're speaking to Sam Michel, a master's student in social policy and development at the Center for Social Development in Africa. And I'm honored to have my supervisor here, Dr. Anthony. So he's supervising me, and yeah, I hope we're going to learn from each other. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Anyone else? I like Lotto. I like choosing arbitrarily. Zanele. Zanele. Oh, Zanele is not there. Ambrose.
Okay, thank you, Prof. My name is Ambrose Dada from the Nelson Mandela University. Hope you can hear me. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm the Department of Media and Communication. I'm doing my currently doing my PhD, and I'm focusing on the religion and celebrity fandom, analyzing Prophet Bushiri's YouTube videos and sermons.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very
Thank
interesting.
you. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Hi, everyone. My name is Diani. I'm doing a master's in social policy and development. So I'm currently working on my research proposal and my presentation.
Fantastic. Anyone else?
Hello.
Go for it.
Hello. Are you getting me? Yeah, good afternoon. My name is Diancy Shengoma. I'm also a PhD student at the Nelson Mandela University. I'm doing my PhD in media studies on the area of community radio in maternal mortality and rural areas. I'm my first year with the study.
Fantastic. Anyone else? Edwin.
Afternoon, Doc. Afternoon, colleagues. My name is Edwin Smelane. I'm doing a master's in social policy and development. I've joined this presentation so that maybe I can get some helpful guidance on how I can prepare for my research proposal, the presentation part. Thank you. Over.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Martha. Okay, there's Nawal Petka, who's currently a pre-registered MA in industrial design. I'm not sure if you're based here at the university, but nonetheless, thank you for joining us. Welcome. As much as I know, we are of different backgrounds, and I'm delighted to see students from other institutions represented here, the Nelson Mandela University. I've been on campus. I was last year in July. There's some colleagues of mine that I'm collaborating with based there, and we occasionally meet, research, and do presentations together. Continuing with our presentation, please confirm with me you can see my screen, right?
Yes, Doc, we can see your screen.
Okay, perfect. 5. Yes, so it's generally research-based work that we're focusing on today, and as I've noticed from the people whom I've spoken to, most of them are working on their proposals, which is a great thing. A proposal is a challenging piece of work, because it's almost you starting your own research, but there is a lot of work that you would need to do. When presenting and preparing to present, So some of the things that you need to think about is, who is your audience? Who are you presenting to? And what is their interest in what you're talking about? What is their level of knowledge? At this stage, you'll be presenting to your supervisors and other members of faculty if it's your proposal. If it's your completed research, you may be presenting to some external examiners. It might be a viva voce where you come and defend your thesis, your PhD. The University of Johannesburg has an assessment process that requires students to present their work and defend their thesis. It's important for the goal and the purpose of the presentation to be clear to you as the presenter. You need to know what you're talking about. You need to understand it. And the questions are always around whether you are informing or imparting knowledge to people who aren't privy to what you have done, people who aren't familiar with the work that you've done. It's a novel finding on a project and you'd like to share, or you want to persuade people to look at phenomena in a different way, and you're presenting some novel insights, or it might be both. Clarity of mind is very, very important. You need to create a clear and logical flow from the very beginning. You will remember that when we started, I introduced myself. This is who I am. This is where I'm coming from. This is what I'll be talking about. So those actions make it easy for you as the audience to understand who the presenter is, where they're coming from. I then discussed the three-part presentation I have and why it was important for me to look at each. I made a little pun around power to the point and the essence of me presenting online, and whether or not MS Teams was going to disappoint me. Fortunately, today I woke up on the right side of the bed and I had a cup of coffee before I joined you. So I was able to get it right. So the mode is important. Is it in person or is it online? If it's in person, I've always believed in what I call absorbing the atmosphere. You have worked very hard to put together a proposal, to put together a presentation, to complete your research. And that decisive moment where you have got, between 10 to 15 minutes to share it can be quite overwhelming. It can be quite overwhelming. And in some instances, you can just get a blank where everything disappears. So avoid placing yourself in spaces where you get to the venue, whether it's online, whether it's in person, late, irritable, or anything that can negatively impact your presentation. So please ensure that your presentation is finalized ahead of time. Ensure that you are familiar with the time that you've been allocated to present. Again, it's between 10 to 15 minutes at this stage. If you're going to be using any tools, for example, PowerPoint, make sure that your presentation is accessible. If you're using your device, that your device is functional. If you have loaded it on a memory stick, that memory stick doesn't have any viruses, and try to make sure that it's the only thing on that memory stick. Because then you find yourself now flipping through the right presentation or the wrong presentation, and then, oh no, this is not the correct one. To people who are listening to your presentation, you may appear to be disorganized. So the onus is upon you to ensure that you're as organized as you possibly can. Some people bring their own watches. You are more than happy to use your own phone as a timer. So a habit of mine. My wife knows it very well that if I have a presentation and it's always a big deal for me. Between the time I'm presenting, I am not available. So my phone is on flight mode because I know that at that time that I'm presenting, that presentation is the most important thing I need to do. So I need to be there fully. And there's also nothing more disrupting than phones going off and messages coming through. The format of the presentation, particularly academic ones based on research, generally follow item 3. So you will notice that there are essential elements which I've highlighted, which is your research question or your research questions. What is the main question that you wanted to answer or that you want to answer? You have objectives, right? Your hypothesis, hypothesis in plural. You have a literature review, and you can combine that with your theory. You have a research methodology. How are you going to answer the main research question? How are you going to address the objectives? If it's a proposal, depending on your institution, they may ask for expected results, expected outcomes. These are also important if you're working on funded projects. Funders always want to have an idea of what to anticipate after your project. What are the key findings? You know, what are the implications of your research? Always avoid researches or research that end up with the so what question. You've investigated whatever issue you're interested in. So what? So I'm not sure we can have a conversation going on, colleagues, how other universities are dealing with it. At the University of Johannesburg, we've drawn our attention towards SDGs. So there must be an aspect around sustainability. And as you're doing your presentation, make sure that the impact of your presentation from a sustainable vantage point comes out. What are the limitations? And what conclusions do we draw from your research? So more of the guiding questions, are around how to make it flow. As a student, one thing that I struggled with, and many academics will confirm as well, is coming up with the golden thread, which is that logical flow where from your title to your conclusion, everything just flows. It's extremely difficult and it takes practice. So a presentation shouldn't be something you rush through and put together. If you're presenting your proposal, then it's ideal that you adhere to the structure or the logic of the proposal. Stick to it. You will ensure that there's this transition between ideas. So you're telling a story. Once you've done your proposal, you've written it, you've finalized your mini dissertation, your dissertation or your thesis, depending on what level you are and how you decided to embark on your studies. You need to know your work like the back of your hand. And the presentation is a guide for you to tell the story of either what you intend on doing, which is your proposal, or what you did, which is your actual research. So you may be talking to people who are not experts. So do away with jargon. We know you're very well educated. I know you're very well educated. The tricky point of using some complex terms is that you may misuse them. So ensure you use simple and direct language. One of my areas of interest is the employment of AI in teaching and learning within the fourth industrial revolution. So I'm interested in generative AI models like ChatGPT. So when we do research around AI and have my students presenting, some of them will come and share lovely presentations, but they've got so many little things moving that they may distract other people. And you may lose time trying to see what's going on. As they say, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. I generally don't use any forms of animations. My presentation is always clear, and I always try and talk through my logic such that the reader understands and the listener, sorry, the audience understand where I'm coming from and where the critical points I need to emphasize. I repeat as a form of reinforcing what's important. Everything is important. By the time you're writing, a minor dissertation, you have anything between 25,000 words to maybe 50,000 words. If it's 1,000 words, if it's a dissertation, a PhD thesis, that's 100,000 words. All of those words are important. But how do you compress that into a short presentation that you can deliver in 15 minutes tops? It's about prioritizing and making sure that you don't read off the slides, you talk to the audience. To make your presentation appealing as well, when necessary, use imagery, visuals, where you're discussing sites, samples, and sampling strategies. Bring in images and graphics. They help a lot. So one table that's got 12 figures can help you in terms of text because you talk to the table. Always be keen and excited about what you're talking about because that positive energy rubs off. Where have you presented before? I'd like to know from you. Where have you presented before? It's an open question. Come through.
Yes, last year I presented in the Department of Anthropology and Development at the University of Johannesburg.
Okay.
It was my research presentation, and yeah, before we go into research, and I also presented to the Southern ASNA conference in Cape Town, where I was selected to also present it. So yeah, those are the two pieces I was able to present.
How did you find the presentations? What was daunting?
I mean, the essence of the presentation was for me to prepare very well and also get strong feedback from the HOD, the department, I mean, the panel that was, conferred to evaluate and also give me feedback, prepare myself very well. That really supported me in terms of researching and looking at some aspects of, when I will be on the field and other things. Yeah, I was nervous in a way.
Okay. So I think my key take home there is that the lack of preparation is preparation for failure.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Anyone else? I see people are typing in conferences. That's Tanya. Tsidiso, webinars. Okay, great. Anyone else would like to share their experiences, professional
Yes,
development sessions? Ambrose, come through.
yes. Oh, okay. My last academic presentation was during my master's proposal defense. That was in 2019. Since then, I've not had any academic presentation, but I'm preparing for 2 presentations in September, and that was why I jumped into this opportunity. But I've been having non-academic presentations in the church and all. Yeah.
Okay. I've presented at many places myself, and these are some of the conference badges that I have with my name. Yeah, I think I have close to, there should be around 30 conference presentations. I've done, if you look me up, I've done several TV interviews nationally and internationally. And with each presentation, I'm telling you, even with this one here, I sat down and I said, why did I do this? Because that's always the first question. Why did I do this? I was asked to come and present, and we were always a bit anxious, but it's through the preparation, as Sam Michelle indicated, that you get a bit more confident around you presenting. Academic proposal, that's Angwenya, who's also done another presentation. Anyone else? Anyone else?
Hello.
Dianus, yes?
Yes, last year the presentation for the conference on East Africa Communication Association, it was held in Kigali, Rwanda, so I had a presentation with a lot of scholars. I did a lot of presentation. I had 2 papers. But actually presenting, as you have said, it's a lot of nerves. Sometimes you need to prepare yourself, and then you are not sure after you are presenting when you have comment, and then you are saying, oh, I've done it well. But before presenting, then there's a lot of pressure you need to prepare yourself. And this year I have another presentation in Tanzania in this month, I think on 29th, East Africa Communication Association, then we have to present. So it was tough to prepare for presentation.
Okay, all right. So that nervousness, it's also influenced by what we call this the imposter syndrome. I'm sure you've heard about it. You actually aren't, you know the stuff, but you somewhat feel like you're a scam, and people are going to catch you out. So confidence is important.
Sure,
confidence is very important. You need to prepare, and you need to be confident. So I'm delighted that a lot of you who've spoken, you've indicated that you have presented at academic platforms, whether it's in the department or it's internationally. Here you heard it yourself, somebody will be in Tanzania doing a presentation. Okay, we've got a question here from Edwin. So Edwin says, my challenge with presentation is when the facilitator rushes me through, or when the slides are limiting. Chain of thought gets off track. I agree with you. So in the coming slides, we'll also have a discussion around what's an ideal length of your presentation, and how can we ensure that we try and limit your discussion, your presentation, to the prescribed time. We'll do that. We'll have that conversation. So let's proceed and see where else. There, right? It's what was raised. Challenges. Time is short.
Sorry,
So
Doc, to interrupt. There is someone who is raising a hand. I think he has a question.
okay, go for it.
Oh no, it's okay. I just wanted to bring a concern here. One of the challenge, like not a challenge, I was maths. I came for my presentation and my sampling wasn't ready. So I decided to rush, and the panel was there. They were following me. They were following me very well. So there's one person who noticed that I wasn't prepared for the sampling very well. And after he mentioned, I told him, yes, I know. You are the only one who was able to point that. So yeah, that's what's in my mind.
Yeah. So if you're presenting to assessors and examiners, you're not the first one they will have seen presenting. And yes, we do have this intuitive knowledge of where possibly things can go wrong. And as someone is talking, we actually know what their strengths and limitations are. The whole point of you presenting, besides the fact that it may be, essentially assessment, it's about us in the end giving you constructive feedback. So feedback that you will take and improve. Just to hop on back to where we were, challenges have been raised in terms of time and how to manage time. We'll talk about that. You also need to understand that people's concentration span is very limited. I'm sure you yourselves have noticed how your mind can wander when somebody is talking. So avoid lengthy presentations. Avoid presentations that are cluttered. So ensure that you have data information that's only appropriate for the point that for the point that you want to make. There are opportunities as well that come with presentations. I've always said it to my students that when you submit a written assessment, a written script, when you submit your work, your voice is only in what you've submitted. So as I read it, I get to get into your mind and see and hear your thoughts. A presentation, on the other hand, is an additional platform that you're given another voice to echo or amplify what you'll have put down in your work, in your proposal, or in your report. So it can help strengthen your position. It can help make your argument heard better. And it can inspire and as well as get your audience excited, especially when you're presenting amongst colleagues. There are different styles of presenting. You can do it orally. And some people have written scripts. Fortunately, I've worked at a number of centers. So a previous line manager of mine was always very particular about what he said. So he would ensure that he would have his script written from intro to conclusion. That's his style. Some people prefer cue cards, where they have little cards that have notes written that prompt them. And some people talk from their head. Ultimately, it boils down to preparation. So how much would you have prepared? And again, the lack of preparation is preparation for failure. You can use images, aids, commentaries, narratives. So 7 P's in a pod. I think the word preparation is going to be one of your key take homes today. 7 P's in a pod. preparation, practicalities, practical consideration. You need to know yourself, your personality. You need to get a sense of who the audience is, people around. You need to know the purpose. You need to know what it is you're focusing on, the production. And also, post-presentation is very important. You're done presenting. How do you deal with questions? Structure your way, the way you structure your presentation is very, very important. We spoke about that golden thread, and I'll re-emphasize again the point that at this stage, if you're presenting work from your proposal or your written report, your mini dissertation, or your thesis, that logic is very important for you to adhere to. Always ensure that your readers are aware of what the key points are. At the end, remind them, what were the main points that we covered? What is important for us to cover? So always try and make sure that your slides are not cluttered. I'm sure you've seen very cluttered slides, a font so small that dear Anthony here, who wears spectacles, is squinting to try and see. Strange fonts in the pursuit of trying to get a nice presentation out there. That won't help. So, rule of thumb, always try to have 6 points on a slide. Those 6 points will have little sub-points. Have not less than 24 main points that you want to go through. Your slides must always start with a cover page. That cover page will have a nice picture in the background if you would like. Your title, your research title, not your research question. What is a question. How do is a question. What will is a question. Have your title there. Have your name as well as the date. If it's at a conference or any formal event, include it there. See, I've been around the block. I found this picture online. It's actually not my friend, but I do have a friend who's a lecturer. As he prepares for classes, he reads in front of a mirror. I know it may sound tacky, it may sound corny, but it's important to find what works for yourself, right? So it's important to rehearse. If you know your work, you feel more confident. When you feel confident, you're able to look at the audience right in the eyes. Then now you're speaking to them. You know what they say? Your eyes are the windows to your soul. You're speaking to the soul. Once you're confident, and the timekeeper, we do have timekeepers who are quite enthusiastic. In my previous lifetime, when I was now an experienced chair, I had a yellow card, literally, and a red card, literally, to indicate yellow for 5 minutes, red, stop, to my to the presenters, to make sure that people stuck to time. So for you to avoid the red card, please prepare. Keep anecdotes under control. I know that some people like telling 1 or 2 jokes. It mustn't become a circus. Please tell jokes, but do that without losing what the punchline is. Watch other presentations. Adjust the volume, your projection of your voice, and also make sure that you position yourself very well. In this era where we have a lot of online meetings, it's ideal for you to invest in a headset. If it's not a headset, just try and make sure that you've got original earphones that came with your device. So whether it's a Samsung, Huawei, or iPhone, the original headset will suffice. It'll be good enough because the mic will be close and you can hear very well. I hope you can hear me loud and clear. If you don't do that, you may have challenges with your audience. They may struggle to hear you. And if it's in a room, I've seen very soft-spoken people whisper. It's good afternoon. My name is Anthony Kaziboni. Today I'll be talking. And then you need to know yourself. So sometimes it may involve a little bit of you going out of character to making sure that people hear you. So there are no hiding places for your personality. If you're extroverts, brighten up presentations. It's people who like to talk, people who can talk. If you're introverted, if you're inward and you're quite reserved, try and catch your opening line. Ultimately, appearance should accentuate your message. So know yourself, know your limitations, know your weaknesses, and work on them backstage such that when you come up, you're ready to deliver a presentation and that there is power to your PowerPoint. Who is listening? How do you win or woo your audience? Keep them engaged. Make eye contact. Move around. Smile. Look interested in them. Nod. Right? Nonverbal communication is very, very important. How you carry yourself, how you manage yourself as you're presenting, influences how people receive your presentation. Are you confident? Or you're sheepish and you're shy and you're somewhat intimidated of the space? In academic settings, colleagues will be nice. They'll probably ask you, to get a glass of water, or if you're unable actually to start, they can ask you to swap spaces such that somebody comes in before you and then you come around. The whole point of you being allowed or asked to present is for you to start developing the skills. You will need to present at work if you work at research-related entities. If you decide to become a lecturer, you will be presenting almost every week if you have classes every week. So also take note of, in quotes, graveyard sessions. Friday afternoon, it's a bad time to present. People have had lunch. People are thinking about the weekend. It's a bad time to present, particularly for work-related activities. So note that. Purpose of your presentation. Communicate what the essence is. You want to inspire people. You want to win people over. You want to woo them. You want to intrigue them. You want to impart electrifying ideas. At a PhD level, what's fascinating for me is After, those 3, 4, 5 years of you working diligently, you've come up with this contribution to knowledge. And you have, whether it's a theoretical concept, construct, or a new theory, you have it. You need to show it, share it, you own it. So it's very important. Again, I'm on camera. Distribute confidence smiles. Use your hands, but not too much. Smile, but not too much. Use body language, your tone, sound levels emphasize important things. I'll forever remember this. During my honors presentation, the final one, I had a pointer and it malfunctioned, and I was now looking at the slides on, I think it was now my my fourth hypothesis that I'd done in my test. So I actually turned and I looked back and I did this. As I was turning back, I remembered deep inside that I shouldn't have done that, because I gave the external examiner and the other supervisors, including my backside. It might have been a small thing, but I remember it. So don't stand anywhere close to the data projector. Don't be planted like a tree. Please move, not too much. Show, point, and look at your audience again. If it's a shared presentation, you can hand it over, but always make sure that you're checking the time. Show conviction, show enthusiasm. You need people to buy into what you're saying, right? If you need us to buy into what you're saying, you need to show us that you're convinced, that you believe in it. Post-presentation, invite feedback. You're encouraging people to talk to you. You can ask them to remain behind. I want us to talk a bit about this. So at the Q&A, you've done the big work, you've presented, you're now sitting anxiously, waiting for some questions. Your presentation has garnered very interest, which we all hope that our presentations do. So you will have people who genuinely want to know more or add to your ideas. So they'll say, good day. Thank you very much for your presentation. My name is Anthony Kaziboni. I'm from the University of Johannesburg. I wanted to, add on, XYZ, or did you by any chance, look into this? If you struggle, be courteous enough and say what you looked into. And it's always polite to say to people, let's meet afterwards for further discussion, if it requires a more elaborate response and time is not on your side. My first conference, it was my second conference attendance, I remember. It was in Cape Town, 2012, at the South African Sociological Association annual congress held at the University of, at UCT. Yeah, it was at UCT. First presentation session, I said, people who were there would remember. There was a gentleman who presented himself as, he had like 4 titles. He was a doctor, he was a professor, he was a reverend, and there was something. So I listened to his presentation with great interest. And I asked my questions. After that, there was another senior professor, well-known, very well-known. He's a sociologist, who also raised his own concerns. So you will then have my name is Dr. Anthony Kaziboni. I've been at the University of Johannesburg, doing research for the last 14 years. My areas of interest are hydropolitics, and I see that, you focused on eThekwini. I've done work in the Eastern Cape. I've done work in Limpopo, the Northwest, and here in Gauteng. I would like to know why you chose eThekwini. All the doc could have said was, how did you arrive at eThekwini? So you have those people who want everyone to know who they are. Then you will have, Sam Michelle, thanks. I read your presentation last week when we met there. And there are people who like to hear the sound of their voices. They will go on and on and on and on and on. So you don't cut off people. Focus on the last thing. Because again, time. Resist the temptation to address people by name, because it creates a relationship between the two of you and seems to alienate the rest, everyone else. Keep the rest of the audience engaged. Respond to them too, not just people who answer questions. So you will notice that when I started, I tried to get to know who everyone was. I asked people to volunteer. Those who didn't, I went and I picked some people for us to discuss. And then, what are the key takeaways? Right? For your presentation to be effective and impactful, you need to prepare. Have a look at other people who've done similar presentations. Plan, rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. I'm sure you remember that. Adaptation practicalities. We've gotten very reliant on technology these days. What if you lose your presentation? You've been allocated 15 minutes. Your presentation has been corrupted by a virus. You open it, it's ABC, ABC, XYZ. What do you do? There's a time when electricity had become so unreliable that, Eskom was load shedding us, every second minute. And then there's a power issue. What do? You need to know your work. So always be prepared. If need be, just make sure that for every presentation you have, you just carry your own slides, right? I'm sure some of my colleagues who here will recognize this. It's an event we had. Have it. It will help you. Always be aware of who you are, your personality. Are you an introvert? Are you extrovert? Think about the audience. Who are they and why are they here? If you're presenting in mixed spaces, and the nature of work that we're doing as well in higher education with a slant towards community engagement and working directly with communities, you will know that, you may be talking to people with PhDs, and at the same time, you're also talking to people who haven't gone to school. You may be talking about very technical issues that require translation, right? How do you make sure that the person who's translating on your behalf understands it? So the balancing act between technical diction, technical jargon, and communicating the points. So we are now about to get into some pointers regarding these presentations. Do you have any questions? Any questions? Hello?
There are no hands raised, Doc, at the moment.
Okay. I would like us to just quickly reflect on the common pitfalls. Yes, Bushe, what are the common pitfalls? We've discussed them, but we didn't use that term.
Hi, Doc. I think actually I've got a question. In terms of, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay, perfect. In terms of like when you're presenting to a panel and it's an online platform, is the panel allowed to ask questions while you're doing the presentation, or do they wait until the end? Because I'm just picking up on what Edwin said about when someone asks you a question and then it just completely derails you. Are you able and allowed to say, okay, Professor, whoever, can you just give me a minute? I'm going to get to that at the end, or what is it, especially in a setting of like an academic presentation, is the aim for them to see how much of what we know we've chewed and we can answer as we go? Or yeah, I think that's my question.
Okay. Anyone else?
Hello, are you getting me?
Loud and clear.
Yeah, I have questions in the section of question again. Then sometimes you present and then if someone wants to ask a question, then his intention is to put you out of focus. Now, if someone is asking what is the intention is that to make you uncomfortable or to put you out of the focus of the presentation, what should be now your response at the presenter? But
Okay.
another question is like what should be our response? For instance, or asking questions and then you realize that this question you cannot respond and you have no answer totally. What should be the response? You know that this totally is out of your area, then you have no idea on the question asked, but you need to respond to someone asked you.
Okay.
Thank
Anyone
you.
else? There are 3 questions. Anyone else? Going once, twice. Okay, great. So Busha says, what if somebody interjects and poses a question? How do we manage that? So very early on, the chairperson of the meeting will explain the rules of engagement. We can term them the rules of engagement. Presentations I'm accustomed to are you are afforded a time to present between 10 to 15 minutes and you present. Then after that, you are then asked questions. So it would be new for me to have this kind of interactive presentation in a formal space, particularly like, at a conference presentation or a presentation that's academic. I have been in spaces where you are debriefing, whether it's to a funder or a supporting organization, and they interject and they ask you questions in between. So that's more interactive. So what I would suggest, Bushe, is that you are aware from the onset what the format of the presentation is. Format in terms of how much time you have and when questions are going to be taken, so that you're not caught away, but are expecting questions as you talk. So when you see a hand up, you won't be surprised. And then Dana's asked 2 questions. The first one was on questions not within the scope of your area or the topic. So again, it will be done politely. Thank you very much, Dr. Kaziboni, for for the purposes of this research, my focus was on. So I therefore did not look at, and that's clear. You can even move a step further and make a note of how that topic or comment or whatever issue that's being raised is important and could be a subject of investigation by another candidate. So my area of interest is hydropolitics. I looked at citizenship and identity formation. And then somebody asks me about race and racism. So my response to that would be, you know, race and racism is important and it's topical. I was looking at identity formation, you know, within the confines of citizenship, aside to race, but more around what it means to be a citizen within the context of contemporary South Africa. It would be interesting if, you know, for further research to focus on that area. So I will take a note of that as a recommendation, or areas of new study. Areas of new study. And then if it's something you do not know, it happens. It happens. You can be asked a question that you actually don't know. And the response I don't know for me is always daunting. So I will say many thanks. I hadn't looked into that. And let's have a chat after the presentation and talk more about it. So once you say that you've actually exonerated yourself by saying, let's engage more, you know, without having to say, I don't know. Okay. DNS, I hope I responded to you. Anyone else?
Yes,
Okay.
Doc.
Ambrose?
Yes. I wanted to ask if there is a format for conference presentations, like a standard format for making conference presentations. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else?
Yes, Dr. Anthony, I would like to ask you, in case you are doing your presentation and one of the panel member asks you a question you don't understand, what strategic answer can you recommend us diplomatically to answer them? Because by then I feel like you are nervous. This question, there's no way for you to get it, to answer it. Thanks.
Okay. Ladies, can we have some hands, please? Pretty, please. While I respond to this, I'd be delighted to hear from some of the ladies who have joined us. So Ambrose asks, is there a specific format for conference presentations? Conference presentations are academic presentations. If it's an academic presentation, it can be delivered within, you know, a departmental setting. It can be at a webinar, a seminar, a symposium, a colloquium, policy discussion, at a conference. So these are like 7 different settings that are academic in nature, where you can deliver, you know, the same paper, or where you can present the same. So there's no prescribed format, but there's a general academic format where you present findings or you present a research. And again, how we started off, you would have your introduction, what it is that you're focusing on. You can reflect on your literature review. You know, what are the core issues that are there in literature? You can then look at your research methodology. You're looking back and saying, for me to answer that question, for me to look at those objectives, this is how I did it. And you need to explain in detail, in sufficient detail, that's always the keyword, in sufficient detail, your methodology. What were your findings, and what are the recommendations, and how do you conclude? So that's the general format of what a presentation is. And in a research setting, that's about it. It's not prescribed, but it's the most logical way of presenting research. And then Sarah Michelle's comment was, what if you don't know? So the don't know, what I gathered from you, Sarah, you're saying that it might be because the question wasn't asked properly. So if the question wasn't asked properly, you can say many thanks for your question. Again, it's always important to be polite. So thank them for their question, even if you didn't understand it. Just make a note and say that I didn't get your question. Would you please repeat it? And then they'll be nice enough to repeat it. And then if you didn't understand it, like you didn't understand it, you can ask them to rephrase it. Would you please rephrase your question? That's perfectly fine. Yeah, that's it. So we'll proceed, and then I'll encourage the ladies that have joined to ask questions. We would like to hear your voices and to also hear the gender dynamics around presentations, because I can imagine how it would feel. There you are, you've been working diligently on your presentation, and there you are, boom, you're presenting off a panel that's predominantly men. How do you respond? It's 5 Anthony's sitting there, and they would like to hear what you've done. Do you just walk in there as though it's Antoinette's, or they're Anthony's? So let's proceed. So some pointers. Please bear in mind everything we've discussed. It's important. I will liaise with the research office and ensure that you have access to the presentation. Who is your audience? Ladies, the big question I asked. And vice versa as well, gentlemen. The panel is predominantly women. How do you manage that? If it's some presentations where there are fellow students, then your colleagues are there. If there's an external examiner, they're there. It might be in a department. You may have access to a projector, but note that PowerPoint presentation is useful, but not always mandatory. Time is of the essence. You have between 10 to 15 minutes in total. Always try to have, to spend about 1 to 2 minutes per slide. Make sure that you articulate properly. Here is an example of a structure. I know, who was it? DNS asked about it, or was it Ambrose? Here's a structure. Ambrose. Yeah, there's a structure. So beyond what you have here, there are things that put off supervisors. So things like spelling. My name is Anthony Kaziboni. My surname is spelled Kaziboni. On numerous instances, I've seen it spelled with an NE at the end. To be my student, 11 and a half months later, it's a final presentation. They spell Kazibone. Attitude is misspelled. So one starts to wonder whether you actually made use of a spell check. So just make sure that your punctuation is correct, your spelling is correct. Departments generally have guidelines. If not, faculties do. Strictly adhere to the guidelines in terms of language and spelling, and even just the use of the American English, the American dictionary, English dictionary. So have your cover page. You'll remember that I introduced myself. My name was there, the topic was there, and the date was there. Include other things that may be of importance. If it's a conference and you're representing your university, try and get the university template. It's the university PowerPoint presentation template. It looks good. You start with your intro. Why was this topic of interest to you? I think for me, it's always something very fascinating. So if I am presenting, let's say, on work I've done in Madibeng, on protest and access to water in the post-apartheid state, I'd start off by saying protesters have been killed in that place, and this is known, right? They've been killed in that place, and this is known. And looking into more around expressions of citizenship in the new South Africa, it was important for me to investigate how people in that research in Madibeng construct their notions of citizenship in a new South Africa. Already I've brought in attention issues around SDGs and access to water. There's a violation of rights, and there's people's lives at threat, whether it's through killings or the lack of access to water. Begin by hooking your audience. What's your hook? What's fascinating about your study? Why do we want to spend the next 15 minutes listening to you? More so, why do we want to give you a distinction mark? Why? Your research question must be clear. I would strongly suggest you avoid double-barreled questions or long and winding questions with 6 commas. Ask your question. When you show the question on the board, on your presentation, make sure you rephrase it so that people really get it. Why is this research important? Why now? Right? So always locate it within a context. It's a temporal context, time, where what is happening. Always look at, the physical space. Where is it geographically? Why is it important to look at that issue in that context, physical space? Make sure that your audience understands how you're going to give the presentations. Have your literature review, which will also include part of your theory. What are the key debates? What is a citizen? What's the most relevant literature? You are Global Southern students. Your work should reflect that you are from Africa and South Africa. Your work should reflect that. We're pursuing decolonization. How is your work hinged on, decolonial, whether they're epistemologies or theories? How so? Who are the main scholars you're citing? Research is generally informed by a gap. You're looking at something that hasn't been looked at. Where is the gap? Your methodology. This is where your research will be tested, methodologically. If it's quantitative research, they're looking at whether it's replicable and whether your findings can be generalizable. If it's a qualitative research, it's trustworthiness. How can we ensure that you arrived at the correct understanding and at the correct findings based on how you did your research? How does the research answer the question that you initially provided? You look at your hypotheses, whether you have 3 or 5 of them and it's a quantitative study, which tests are you going to do? Why are you going to do them? Do you justify them enough? You look at the approach. Which approach are you adopting? Qualitative, quantitative, what informs that? So for each one of these, approach, location, population, sample, methods, ethical issues, clearances, always bear in mind the why. You say, I'm going to adopt a quantitative research methodology and use a survey. Quantitative is already why. You need to explain that in your presentation. Survey, why? You need to explain that. Location, why? You need to explain that. Sampling strategy, you need to explain it. Your methods, you need to explain them. Ethical issues that you deal with, explain them. So your methodology revolves around answering a lot of why. And these are very fine things you need to be able to justify. So yes, your supervisor your assessor might not be looking at you, but they're listening. So for me, when you get to this stage here and you start presenting, I'm asking the why questions. Limpopo. I did my study in Vembe district. I identified 13 participants for a master's degree who were key informants. How? Why 13? Why not 15? So if it's qualitative, you need to reach to a point of saturation. I'm sure you know that. So if I don't hear the word saturation, then already now you need to explain that. So then you present your key findings. What's novel? What are your conclusions and what are your recommendations? So we'll then have a discussion after this. I think I've had my moment of fame. Most talks, most presentations will go according to plan. You have support from your audience, and in an academic setting, it's generally your colleagues or your supervisors. We've discussed the most common mistakes which are avoidable, and most of them are avoidable if you prepare. The world won't end if it goes wrong. You will make a glitch. You might make a glitch very early on, but you need to quickly collect yourself so that you can carry on. In a nutshell, this is me and my ideas around presenting. Let's have a conversation. Okay, so a question from Liseve. Anthony is fine, no titles. What can be the size of your formatting so that your slide can be visible and still be 10 slides? I will cheat and look at mine. And so the formatting as well depends on the font you choose. Some are bigger, some are smaller. So for example, in my presentation, I used in text or in the body, it was Arial narrow 18 and my headings were 28. So my question to you is, could you see my presentation well? Lisebe. All right, thank you. We have a hand from Evelyn. Eve?
Yes, good afternoon. So my
Good
question
afternoon.
is how to effectively engage your audience, especially when your idea or your topic is new or is unfamiliar to them. Hello, can you
Okay.
hear me?
I got that. How to effectively engage your audience when you're presenting a new topic? Interesting question. Anyone else?
Yes, Doc.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I'm thinking there could be situations where you just need to present a section of your dissertation or thesis because it might still be an ongoing study or work, but you just want to share some of your thoughts. For example, maybe just a section of the literature review. Is that acceptable?
Okay, anyone else? James, go for it.
Greetings from Kampala, Uganda.
James, you're quite faint. You're very faint.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Do you hear me now?
Yes, you are. You're very soft-spoken, eh?
Yeah. You remember the character you talked about? Yeah. Okay, now, mine is more of a comment, that you can go ahead and maybe critique a student for giving in work that is incomplete, but I have a feeling that learning is iterative. We keep on iterating, we keep on, modifying as we move on. So in the cases where we are given deadlines, you may not be that perfect with whatever you are presenting. So I think even the kind of comments supervisors give, or even colleagues, must also be considerate at times. Otherwise, thank you.
All right. Thanks, James. It shows as Ngwenya, as I believe it's your surname. What's your first name?
Oh, my first name is Pilot.
Pilot, yes, Pilot.
Yes. I wanted to ask, how do you respond most of the time you are presenting and you have statistics on ground? Maybe by the time that you were still doing your research, those statistics, they were still like holding water, like the inflation rate, the unemployment rate. Then here comes the day for the presentation, and sort of one of your audience asks you, are you so sure, or you have to be so sure about the statistics that you are giving us? Maybe they are looking currently or Googling quickly, what is the inflation rate or the unemployment rate? So how do we deal with such situations?
Okay. I'll take these 4, and as I take these 4, James, I'll throw it back at you. You can have a first jab at your question, and then I'll give you my 2 cents of it. So starting with Eve, how to effectively engage your audience when you're presenting a new topic. Your topic may be new in terms of the context that you're conducting your research and the aspect that you might be looking at. But your assessors and supervisors are experienced enough methodologically. So what they may just then need to do is to get a different appreciation and a better read of the work that you would have been looking at and the work that you're doing. So for you as the presenter, it's about focusing on what's most important. So let's say, for example, if you're from Tanzania, I'm giving an example. You're from Tanzania and you're looking at something in the city of Arusha. I've never been there. It would be the first time as your supervisor that I write the word Arusha. I know about it because I've seen it. But now that I'm engaging my student, I now know that there's a place called Arusha. When you are discussing this site, there are descriptives you need to engage. You need to engage you need to talk about Tanzania. You need to talk about whether it's a city, a town, a village. You need to tell us. You need to give us some statistics about it that will help us understand better why this site is ideal for the investigation. If it's a program or a project you're evaluating, we need to know the background. What's the background of this project? Why was it implemented? What successes have been documented? So your supervisors are very skilled in terms of critically engaging with the work that you've done. They will be able to pick up the finer details, the granular details that they want you to bring out of your work. So the long and short of it is, don't be intimidated or assume that because they don't come from where I come from, or they don't know what I know, they may not understand it. To digress a little bit, my master's research was on Foucault's notion of biopower. I was brave enough, I went and I used Foucault, looking at the relationship between the state and orphans in foster care, using Foucault's notion of biopower as a theoretical lens to understand that relationship. My supervisor was being, if you know postmodernism and postmodern scholars, they're fairly recent. So it was the first time, we were all going through the works of Foucault. But because the person is a skilled researcher, she got onto it. So it's not about whether somebody knows or not. Then Ambrose, you want to present a certain aspect of your work. So it's a great question. So my response to you is to appeal for careful consideration. So when you've done I'll talk about you having completed your PhD. You will probably be aiming at getting some publications out. And you've got, 2 or 3 unique ideas you want to publish. You can do that. But you need to understand that the methodology is the same. Right? So, for example, you have 3 different objectives you want to tackle. And you then come up with 3 fascinating findings around each one of those. And you believe that you can publish 3 different papers using those. You can go for it, but your methodology is the same. And now you need to look at literature that essentially speaks to each one. So you can theoretically do that. If you're drawing work from your literature review, you would need to have a methodological discussion around how you did your literature review. Is it a conceptual review, right? What is it, a systematic review? What sort of a review did you do for us to believe what you came with? For us to consider what you came with as novel findings? Because you can write a paper based on a review of literature. I recently did that. But what's new, right? Methodologically, you need to tell us that. And then pilot. how to respond to criticisms around dated stats. There you are, you have completed your research now, and yet you used unemployment statistics from last year, and Dr. Kaziboni raises it. Well, first and foremost is that any fact you provide in your research should be supported by citation. So you will provide the stats and acknowledge that I note what you're saying. Based on what I looked at, I used, as you will see on the board, stats as a general household survey or the unemployment stats from 2022. Acknowledge, and you acknowledge that they're dated, and you will make the change. Of all the criticisms you can get, I think that one is, you can, sort of like wiggle your way out of it. If it's within reason as well. You cannot come. I remember I was looking at one of my students' work, or it's a couple of my students' work. Yes. And their literature reviews were well written, but the challenge I had was that they were making reference to literature from 2005 to about 2015. So I essentially say to them that if you look at your literature, the arguments you're making are outdated, they're a decade old. And if you were doing this research in 2016, it would have been novel, but the landscape has changed. So the first thing you do as a student is to look at the most recent literature, right? Look at the most recent literature. Go right. When you've written, when you're done with your literature review, just take a quick look back and see if there's anything new. If not, do your literature review, finish it, methodology, finish it, look at your findings and finish them. Discuss your findings and present your findings and finish it. Before you submit, that week ahead of submission, pay attention to stats that are released annually. If you do that, you'll be able to go and check out, oh, I made reference to the Auditor General's reports from mid this year, another one was released. What did it say? To then make your argument stronger. And then I responded to the 3, and then James, your supervisors weren't nice to you and they say to you, is it? Yeah.
No, what I said was the kind of comments one can give. Like you can have deadlines. Let me say you have a deadline every week, or fortnightly. You have to present something, but you are there struggling to understand the concept, whatever you want. And then you have, but I have a feeling that it's better you give whatever you have by that time, such that you don't keep on procrastinating. Because now when you procrastinate, then again you might be seen as someone who is not again serious. So I was just looking at it from that angle, that at times the comments might not be friendly, not just because you're still, like for example, you're still struggling to understand the theories, you're still struggling to understand the things that you know, and then so you can't really have a good and professional paper to present. So, but now if you are talking of a conference paper, then that is maybe you have gone through, you have prepared quite enough. But if it's like these other interactions we have with supervisors, then the kind of presentations you can have might not be that like what you have been discussing, that you must have prepared well, then you know the ideas. Otherwise, the whole concept of us being in school may lose meaning, because you can't you'll be perfect in whatever you are doing.
Okay, so
yes,
I slightly disagree with you, with a smile. and this is my reasoning. So curriculums are constructed in a way such that if you dedicate the allocated time, you should be able to complete the task. That's how they're designed. Should be able to complete the task. So if you're unable to, right, it shouldn't be a bomb that your supervisor is receiving at 8 a.m. that you cannot submit or you cannot submit. So that's the first one. As you're developing, whether it's your proposal or your work, your research, your supervisor must always know what you're doing. If you have a challenge, write to them, ask for a meeting. Study groups at this stage are very, very important. I think my one regret, people closest to me know it. My one regret during my PhD some years back was that, with COVID and everything that happened, I worked in a silo. So it was quite stressful. Where you can be in a group with people, hold each other accountable. So that's the one regarding you, your colleagues, and your supervisor. It shouldn't be a bomb where your supervisor receives an email that you can't submit. One thing you should avoid, I don't want to say never. One thing you should avoid is to submit substandard work. It's a poor reflection of your time management, and it's a poor reflection of your adherence to rules and academic conduct. If you're struggling, let your supervisor know ahead of time. We are aware of that we're all different students. You're all different students coming from different backgrounds with a different set of skills as well as challenges. So have them know what's going on, because as I've said, once you submit a written piece, your mouth stops talking. So if you fumble to submit the report, I won't know that there were legit concerns or not, or whatever the reason was, and the presentation is presented in a similar way. We won't receive it positively. And aside from this, comments and feedback you get from your supervisors, as postgrad students, you need to develop a thick skin. We won't be friendly to you. We might not be nice to you. We may not tell you what you want to hear, how you want to hear it. You can submit to me something and I'll look at it and I vehemently disagree, and all I write is no with an exclamation mark. No. Right? Look at comments, whether you agree with it or not, constructively. At the back of your mind, all of you, I want you to know that your supervisor wants you to do well. Beyond your own progression, it's their progression. I want my students to do well. So if I find myself stalling your progress, I'm stalling mine. I need you to move on with your life. I need to move on with my life. I need you to move on with your career, however you're charting it. And same as me. So let's work together collaboratively. If there's an issue, raise the alarm bell before it's too late.
All right. Thanks,
All right.
Prof.
Don't mention it. Don't mention it.
Come again?
Don't mention it. There is a register, a form that's been posted in the chat. Please make time and have a look at it. It's a survey that you will get your certificate of attendance. Please, please complete that. It's from the organizers. Anyone else? Anyone else? I will type in my email address in the chat. I'd be happy to have a look at your presentations. Yes, Pilot, if you have one.
I was wondering if I can ask something that is outside the issue of presentations.
Go for it.
a component for thesis writing. So here is my case. I am struggling with coming up with headings for empirical literature. So I was wondering what informs me to have such headings for empirical literature. Is it something that comes from my objectives or my research questions? That's question number one. Then number two, I'm intending to do a funnel approach analysis when I'm doing my empirical literature. So after having my headings, does it mean that each heading I do it in a funnel approach, or one heading I can be looking at regional, the other one I can be looking at international, the other one I'll be looking at global or something like that? If I can help me with clarity on those two issues. Thank you.
Thanks. It's a great question, and that's the PhD. It's a great question, and that's the PhD. So your PhD is a book, and at the end, the book needs to like go full circle. Your introduction, please flow with me. Your introduction should mirror your conclusion. So you start off with, I set out to, and you conclude and say, I found that, and in conclusion. As you develop your introduction, in your problem statement, you will engage a lot of literature where you come up with, the gap and what you're looking at. You will also have, and you've said, your objectives. Your objectives are the guiding light to your literature review. Your objectives are telling you what's critically important to answer the research, for you to answer the research question. So once you attain those objectives, you're sure that you're going to answer the research question. Your literature review should somewhere have that logic of your objectives. You set out to, and to, and to, and theoretically, this is it. So ideally, I always say to my students, if they're master's students, they should have about 4 objectives. If they're PhD candidate, about 5. And the last one always has to speak to some theory, Then your methodology, that's like the anchor. That's how I phrase it in my mind. It's the anchor. It's what grounds your research. Your findings should mirror your literature review, because your literature review draws from your objectives. So those objectives, you present them in the same sequence. You then discuss what the anchor is, what grounds your research, how you did it, and then your findings. How you split them is something else, but the logic should be consistent. So again, pilot, I think that's what's important. And you need to relook at it starting from your intro and how you developed your problem statement and the objectives. How you presented the objectives, that logic should follow through in the literature review. That logic should follow through again in the findings, how you then mirror your literature review, saying that, in literature, this is what is there. However, this is what I found. Or in literature, this is what is there. This is what I found, which is aligned to what's in literature. So it's in your findings. Yes, pilot.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much for that clarity.
All right. Anyone else? Okay. All right. We will finish 15 minutes early. Thank you everyone for joining. I really, really enjoyed the session. Again, many thanks to the organizers. I look forward to seeing you in future. If the organizers would please collate an email list, I'll be happy to write to them. I have my presentation, which I can share with you as well. I've posted my email address in the chat. You can also get it online. My name is Anthony Kaziboni, Kaziboni. Yeah, until we meet again, keep well. Bye.
Thank you so much, Dr. Anthony, for such an informative presentation. Thank you also to our participants for joining. The recording as well as the presentation, as Doctor has mentioned, will be shared to your Moodle communities. We will communicate with Dr. Anthony to get the presentation and share everything with you, a recording as well as the presentation. Thank you so much. Don't forget to fill out the evaluation. It helps us for reporting purposes as well as organizing more workshops of this kind. Thank you.
So thank you so much. Is it Dr. Mpefumula talking?
Pardon?
Who's talking? The voice, I'm quite familiar with the voice.
No, I'm Kosiecho. I'm not
okay.
doctor either.
All right. So it's lovely meeting you. Have a wonderful day.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.